Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/Riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. And on today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have guest Rich Martinez. He's on the board of directors for the State Banking Board for Colorado, and he's also the president and CEO at Young Americans Center for Financial Education. Rich Martinez on the Riderflex podcast today. How you doing, Rich?
Very good. How about yourself?
Well, I'm hanging in there considering it's April 15th, 2020, right in the middle of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Doing okay. How about you? You safe and well? Your family okay?
We are doing well. So I'm enjoying at least that I get out of the household to come to the office. I don't think I could be locked up with everybody.
Buddy, let me tell you. My wife has been home now for, and I love my wife dearly, don't get me wrong, but my wife's been home for 26 days. And we all work virtually at Riderflex, so we work from home. So my wife and I have been in the same house 24 hours a day for 26 days in a row.
Holy moly. Yeah.
We're sitting on the couch the other night, and she goes, "You're starting to drive me nuts." Yeah, we're getting through it though, man. You got to stay positive in these times, right? Try to anyway.
Absolutely.
Give us some, some Rich Martinez personal stuff. Talk to us about, family stuff. Maybe even start with where you grew up and some of your family, even before you got married and had kids. Walk us through some personal stuff, if you don't mind.
Great. Yeah. So I grew up in Pueblo, Colorado, in the southern end of the state. My father was a steel worker, so blue-collar household. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. I have one younger brother, but really a typical blue-collar household. I grew up in a trailer park. I think we were still better off than most of the kids in the neighborhood. My parents really instilled a hard work ethic, so a strong work ethic, and really earning what you need and paying your bills. But money was always a fascination for me growing up. I think maybe because we didn't have any, communications around money in the household were ever positive. It was always negative. But I think you grow up where you grow up, and I'm thankful for that I had both mom and dad home and still around, and so cool. Strong work ethic and a great background to grow up, great working class family.
Graduated from Pueblo East High School and then went to CSU. You moved up to Fort Collins?
Yes, yeah, very similar sized town at the time. Fort Collins and Pueblo, I think, really took different paths as time went on, but a really small town, and so trying to find a place where that I could fit in. So as a first generation college student, I think that was really important. So congratulations.
Thanks. Did your brother go to school too, or no?
Yes, yeah, he ended up at CSU and as well. So yeah,
wow,
graduated from college.
Congrats to your parents. And neither one of them went to school, and they sent two boys to CSU. How about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. They're very proud.
Pretty cool. All right. And so you had a fascination with numbers early on. That's why you majored in finance?
Yes. Yeah. I always actually wanted to be a banker. My youngest son, when he went through his middle school career exploration pieces that they do, he said, "Dad, what did you want to grow up to be?" And I said, "I wanted to be a banker." And he said, "You are a banker, Dad." And I said, "Well, I've always wanted to do that. I've always loved money." And like I said, maybe because I didn't have any, but there was always a fascination with how do markets work, how do banks work, and all of that.
Wow. So that was the goal from the very beginning. All right. I was wondering about that. So you graduate, and then early on you get the job at the Federal Reserve, bank examiner.
Yeah, so I had an internship while in college with what is now Wells Fargo, but a few predecessor banks, and they taught me the banking business. Every semester, I would go to a different department, from being a teller to a new accounts representative to running in those days proof and processing checks to doing loan leads. Research. So they showed me the entire banking business, and the Federal Reserve picked me up and said, you know how to do every job in a bank. We want you to start auditing and figuring out where the holes are when we audit these banks.
How about that? Okay, so when I saw bank examiner, the title on your LinkedIn profile, anytime I hear bank examiner, I think of the movie It's a Wonderful Life.
Absolutely. That's what everybody does.
Where the guy comes in like, bank examiners here, or something like that. That's all I think about every time I hear that term.
That's
Okay.
That's what everybody does. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. You had a nice run there. It was 7 years. And then talk to us about your career a little bit after that. Walk us into a little bit of your career. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, growing up, like I say, as with a household that really was not very sophisticated with money, my parents did not have a checking account until I left for college. It was always a mystery to me. And so other people taught me about money, not my family.
Okay.
And so as a bank examiner, one of the institutions that I supervised was Young Americans Bank, the world's only bank for young kids under the age of 22. And our branch executive here in Denver said, well, this bank's in your portfolio. I'm going out to speak to their youth advisory board. You need to come with me. And I fell in love with the organization and their mission to teach kids about money and banking. And so I began to volunteer. And that led to one day them calling me and saying, we have a job opening. You're out in all these banks. You probably know somebody that's looking for a job. And I said, wow, me, I would love to talk to you about that. And they said, really? You would like to do that? So that led to a career where I started as vice president of compliance. I then headed up the bank side of the house, vice president of the bank. Then I became chief financial officer over the bank and the nonprofit arm, and then have been president and CEO of all entities now for the last 12 years. So
wow.
It turned into an incredible career, and I call it my American dream of really being able to teach kids about money and exactly what I wondered about as a kid, being able to teach masses about finance and banking and the free enterprise system.
Congratulations. You've been there, almost 21 years?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
It flies by.
You're a humble guy too, because I can always tell when people are a little bit humble, because on your LinkedIn profile, you don't show all those promotions. You just show, hey, I'm the president there. But wow, you went in at a lower rank and got moved up several times. So congrats on that. And now you're the president and CEO. Will you give an overview for the listeners who have never heard of Young Americans Center for Financial Education? Just give us a nice overview if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's the organization started back in 1987, founded by cable pioneer Bill Daniels, that was really considered the father of cable television. But his premise is that the free enterprise system is the best system in the world. The bank is the center of that system. And if you didn't know how to navigate a bank, manage your finances, how are you going to realize the American dream? So he started Young Americans Bank as the world's only bank for young kids under the age of 21. And so, of course, a lot of hurdles there. And from the Young Americans Bank grew Young Americans Center for Financial Education, our companion nonprofit. And we offer 3 different programs through there. One is Young Ameritown, which is for 5th graders, where they run a kid-sized town for a day after doing about 26 hours of lessons in the classroom, as we partner with teachers, really learning about civics, the free enterprise system, how to run a business, how to manage their personal finances. And they put that all into practice with the culminating event where they come and run a kid-sized town for a day. So that program now reaches 50% of Colorado 5th graders, so about 35,000 kids a year. We also have licensees in Casper, Wyoming, Lenora, Kansas, and we're working on Albuquerque, New Mexico. So a nice regional program there.
Nice.
We move up to middle school and we have a lesson in global economics. So our program there is called International Town. Kids go through a similar format of having classroom lessons, and their culminating activity is to come and run the world for a day. So we have a simulated world of 16 countries that we've broken up into 4 fictitious regions. Each region has its own currency with the relative value to the other region's currencies. That 50% of the simulation is them being travelers. And so traveling the world, understanding currency exchange, buying souvenirs, understanding different cultures. The other side is really the economic piece. So understanding the interdependence of our world, specialization, trade, but really getting 7th graders, 12 to 14-year-olds to understand this complex world that we live in, as we're seeing now with the coronavirus and the disruptions in our supply chains, but understanding why the world operates and how it operates the way it does. So we reach about 11,000 students a year through that program here in the Denver metro area. And then our last pillar is entrepreneurship. And so for a long time, with Bill Daniels, our founder, being one of the most notable entrepreneurs in the Rocky Mountain region, in notably or arguably in the world, we worked with entrepreneurs that had their own businesses, so young entrepreneurs, to help them grow those businesses, support them with mentorship, ongoing seminars. We have a statewide competition called the Spotlight on Youth Biz Stars that we honor these young business owners and match them up with prominent entrepreneurs and business people in the community that serve as their mentors. And then in 2015, we acquired another nonprofit, a small nonprofit in the Denver area called Youth Biz, that really worked with inner city youth and helping them understand the importance of entrepreneurship. So with that acquisition, we now take kids from understanding entrepreneurial thinking and all the way to business ownership and having those businesses. So a vast variety of programs with Young Americans Bank and Young Americans Center, but all focused on how do we utilize our free enterprise system to our benefit, and really keeping the legacy of Mr. Daniels alive.
You know, isn't it ironic how you grew up in a household not knowing not being taught anything about the banking or the money? Like you said, your parents didn't even have a checking account, and here you are leading an organization that teaches children all about that. I mean, wow.
I mean, like I say, I look at it and I say, this is the American dream. This is, if you work hard and you take advantage of opportunities, I'm the American dream. I've lived it.
You know, for the listeners that aren't familiar with Young Americans, I encourage you to visit yacenter.org. It's yacenter.org, I believe, is the main website. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Rich?
Yep.
And then from there, you'll see all the great information, and you'll also see the social media buttons at the bottom of the webpage, and some really great YouTube videos on there too. I mean, great social media, all around, but some YouTube videos on there that really go into showing some of the day in the life of some of the students, as they're moving through their exercises. I really enjoyed that. I was blown away by what I saw. My first reaction was, wow, I didn't know about this. My second reaction was, I wish I would have put my kids through it. Some really inspirational stuff in there. It is true how many, kids go all the way through regular school and they just aren't taught these things. They just aren't taught these things. And the fact that you guys are doing that early on, you're helping shape lives. Do you have any idea how many children you've touched and affected in an inspirational way over the last 21 years? Have you ever tried to add that up?
Yeah, so we're actually, since we started in 87, it's 32 years, almost 33 years. Yeah, and we're over 850,000 youth that we've reached since inception. So wow. Yeah, it continues to grow, and like I said, Mr. Daniels' legacy continues to go on. So.
I'm going to guess some of those 850,000 are now donors to the nonprofit.
Absolutely, yes. So I talked about it earlier, but we have a youth advisory board in addition to our adult boards. And those youth advisory board members are now donors and mentors to kids, and they are continuing to give back, which is was another one of Mr. Daniels' pillars, is to make sure that you share that wealth of knowledge that you gain.
Now, as CEO, what percentage of your daily life is raising cash with donors versus running the operations? What is it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it is probably 80% fundraising, 20% operations.
Yeah.
That has been flipped a little bit on its side now with the pandemic, and I am getting a little bit more involved in operations to make sure that I'm a backup for bank staff, and still continuing to be in touch with donors, but not making a lot of fundraising calls. Really, just solidifying our existing donors. But I'm in the bank. I haven't pulled out a teller drawer lately, but I'm doing overdraft reporting and wires and things like that. So it all comes back to you. It's one of those things you never forget.
Yeah, and doing that, you're probably like, oh, I forgot we were doing it that way. Actually, we might be able to make an improvement on that process or whatever, right?
It's one of those career pieces that I tell my employees and my kids is, you never forget where you came from, and constantly look at how things are done. And the only way you can do that is to kind of do that. And I know some big corporations, they're not able to go back to the front lines, but I am here, and I enjoy that. Not only the interaction with our staff and our teammates, but just getting back in the nitty gritty of things and going, wow, this is where I started, and this is great.
It's healthy for a CEO to do that, especially if you are with a small enough company. I mean, if you're Fortune 500, it's hard to do that. But interesting you mentioned that, because recently, even at Riderflex, as a search firm, we had a situation where, as the CEO, I kind of dove back down and managed, quote, managed a search by myself without any other recruiters involved. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I forgot we were doing it that way. It was good. It was a good exercise. Also interesting that you mentioned I think what I heard you say, maybe not in these words, but I think you were saying, I've been careful not to call and ask people for money right now because this is an odd, kind of weird situation we're in as a country. And so you're a little careful with some of those phone calls. I think I heard you say that. It's interesting. We're the same, right? Even at Riderflex, we haven't done a lot of what I would call door knocking for new business to say, hey, Mr. Business Owner, how about a new expense and signing us up as a new vendor? Like, right now, this week, April 15th, probably not the best week to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's exactly what I meant, is we're solidifying our good relationships and making sure they understand where we are and what we're doing, and solidifying their support, utilizing my board members and their connections to get the word out that that our mission is important now as it ever is. But yeah, we're not out trying to make new relationships at this point.
Yeah. How many employees, by the way?
So we're just a little north of 50 employees. So it kind of ranges. We are down a little bit now. So we did furlough some staff. We don't have school groups coming in. So we did furlough about 12 staff just to make sure that we maintain, because we're a company talking about financial literacy and good financial habits. We want to make sure we walk the walk and talk the talk. So we have a strong balance sheet, and we want to maintain that throughout this. So not eating into reserves.
Yep, I totally agree. Have you already thought about adding this crisis situation now in as a quote class or an exercise now, that like, hey, when you come in to do Young Ameritown, you got to go through this exercise to figure out what you would do in a situation like this? Have you thought about plugging something like that in there?
So in International Town, we introduce different dilemmas during the day that they have economic situations, and we have a pandemic dilemma. I don't think it goes as deep into this, but we had kind of, an Ebola type scenario that they would go through, and they do lots of other things in International Town, like, trade routes would be interrupted. So there would be a natural disaster. There's economic turbulence, immigration. And it's amazing to say 12 to 14-year-olds are tackling big issues like that, but they're hearing it in the news every single day. And for them to at least understand the basics of those kind of world issues is very valuable.
What I love about a 10 or 11-year-old's comment or answer about a problem or a situation or a process is they make, I don't know if I'm going to use the right words, but they say things without any filter of politics or weird relationships they might have in the office, or, oh, I got to keep Mary happy, so let me say this thing, like an adult would, I got to say this certain way because I don't want to make that department mad, or I don't want to. And like an 11-year-old just says like a very common sense answer, like, yes, we're going to do this. Why wouldn't we do that? Like they just say, like, it's just matter of fact, like, well, yeah, this is the answer. But then as we get to be adults, we have to put all these filters in there, and we're worried about all the relationships and the politics.
Yeah. Well, and they're looking at it as a game. And so they're doing whatever is needed to make sure they get to a solution, whether that be bartering, whatever. And and you look back at that and go, wow, if we as adults could put all that other stuff aside, we could get a lot of work done.
A lot of work done. You're absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. Let me ask you this real quick. We, on the Riderflex podcast, a lot of what we do is give out career advice and job interviewing advice. And boy, right now there's going to be more people looking for jobs than there were 30 days ago. You've interviewed and hired a ton of people now at this point. And do you do resume and job interview training at all, or any exercises around that with the kids, or no?
We do. Even as young as 10 years old, they come up with they do a job assessment. I call it a mini Myers-Briggs test to understand what their skills are. And then they put together applications and resumes and interview for their positions in Young Ameritown. So it's great to see these young people start. And we also bring in outside people. So it's not mom and dad or teachers doing it. It's business people. So that we call it the suit and tie moment. So they dress up, they're nervous, and that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
As you talk about, interviewing, I love to see somebody with a little bit of nerves. I mean, the guy that comes in and is too polished, that's a little scary to me.
Yeah, you're right.
Because I would rather have them throughout an interview become more comfortable with me and the organization, and then I really see who they are. But if they come with a little nerves, that's a real person.
I agree. What are some common mistakes you see people make during an interview?
I think touting themselves and some of their experiences, trying to make them too grandiose, instead of boiling it down to here's what I did, and let the interviewer dig in a little bit and pull some of those out. I think they come in far too rehearsed, and sometimes you get those rehearsed answers too, and then they can't go beyond those. So like I say, I really like real people, and you can figure out pretty quick who's real and who's not.
It's true, right? You're so right. Why do they always embellish? Not to be too harsh here, but I always tell my recruiters, I'm like, look, every candidate is lying a little bit about something. Embellish, use the word embellish if you want to, instead of lying, since that's a harsh word, but they're all stretching something. They're all of them. So your job as a recruiter is to figure out how far they're going and see if you can go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and it's human nature to want to take, take credit for things that maybe quite aren't there. I mean, from storytelling, just normal life. But I think in a job interview, you want to be as real as possible. I'm always looking for, number one on my list is a great personality fit for the team. And so we do a lot of, myself and our HR VP, we do the first round, and then I always bring in team members because I want to hear how they act. First of all, just to watch them, but also to see what they say to a team member or a direct supervisor. And that actually is the best input that I get is from those people, or even just watching to see how do they treat other people. I always look back at Mr. Daniels said, it's how you treat the receptionist, not how you treat, the vice president or the president, that makes a difference here, because those are people that will live with you for a long time.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I love, by the way, how you let your team members visit with people after you and HR visit with them. And I think that's good just for any managers or hiring managers or recruiters out there. I think that's the best process. I'm not in favor personally of letting the team members interview a candidate first and then moving up to the hiring manager. I prefer the process you're using. I think that is best, and that's a good one. How about this? With your own career now, and by the way, great career. I mean, congratulations on everything you've done there. If you could look back and call that young man coming out of CSU, let's say, I don't know, I'm guessing you were 21 or something when you graduated. What would you tell him today?
I think, this is a very interesting piece of advice is to calm down and live life a little bit. I was coming from the background that I came from. It was charge forward as quick as possible. I had a young bride and a young family, but it was all about the career. And I think sometimes you miss things. I think, I miss time with my young family. I love my kids dearly and spend a lot of time with them now, but I see my daughter that's 20, 21, almost here in a few months, going over a similar path. I mean, she's in hospital administration, and she's like, by the time I'm 40, I'm going to be running a hospital. And I said, honey, that might not be the best thing for you. I mean, take it easy and enjoy life. That's what I would say is I was so focused on climbing the career ladder, making money. I fortunately had an incredible partner, my wife, Stacy, kept me grounded and took care of the household, but she let me do that and let me get there. But we're finally backing off now and saying, yes, you enjoy your job, you love your career, but make sure that you spend time with the family. And that's, her forcing to say, we will take a family vacation every year. You will have family dinners. You will do all of these things. And it's helped me, and it's actually helped me with my teammates and my team here in saying, you know what, it's okay. Go home. We're not going to kill ourselves today. It's time to go home.
That's one of the things that I respect about millennials. And by the way, I pick on millennials on the Riderflex podcast constantly. I pick on them all the time. But the one thing I do respect is that I feel like millennials in general have a better work-life balance attitude than we did growing up in the 80s, right? Because I was like you. I mean, my dad was an oil field worker from Oklahoma, and he's drilled work ethic into us from day one. And so it was all about just work 24/7, work as hard as you can. And I was very similar, and I'm a little bit older than you, but I would concur. And my advice to the listeners would be the same. One of the biggest, I don't have too many regrets in life, but one of them that I do regret is just not spending more time with my sons doing fun stuff. I mean, it's now at the age of 53 and the last few years, I go camping all the time in the mountains, often by myself or maybe with a friend or something. And my sons are grown. They're working. They have their own lives, so they can't go a lot. But my point is, I spend a lot more time going camping and getting away and to relax and enjoying life now than I did when they were little. And I could have done a hell of a lot better job with them when they were small, and we could have spent a lot more time together doing stuff like that. And I didn't because I just worked all the time. And so, if you're listening to this episode and you're in your 30s and you got young kids, it's cool to be CEO of a company, but don't make sacrifices that you'll regret later, because you can't go back. It's not a VHS tape movie. You can't just hit rewind.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly as you say. It's cool to be a CEO, but that comes with a lot of responsibility. And that's what I tell my daughter. I'm like, don't take that too soon. Enjoy life.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like you're learning how to balance it now, though, which is cool.
Yes, and like I say, my wife is definitely forcing that to make sure that I continue on that path. But we were before the crisis, we were going to take our first trip without kids. We're big tennis players and tennis fans, and so we were headed to Palm Springs to the Indian Wells tournament. That we were headed out the day after they canceled it. So they canceled on Sunday night. We were headed out the next day for the tournament, and really our first trip without kids and enjoying life, and we got kind of slapped back.
Well, hopefully it's going to lift pretty soon. I really hope so. We're recording this on April 15th. I sure hope we can get out pretty soon. I'm getting stir crazy, and I'm going to just guess that I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I hope it gets lifted pretty soon. Last question for you, Rich. At this stage in your life now, how would you define your core purpose in life as of today if you had to put it into a sentence?
Wow, that's pretty hard. That's difficult.
It is, isn't it?
I think I've gone from the wanting to earn more money to making a difference in people's lives. And in my case, it's making sure that young people understand how to manage their finances. And so I would say it's going from corporate person to mission related, but utilizing all those skills of running things like a business, running a nonprofit like a business to make a difference and make a difference in all of our young people.
I bet it feels good when you get that call from that 24-year-old that says, "Hey, Rich, it's me, Johnny. Do you remember me? I came through your course and it really made a difference in my life." I bet that's pretty special.
Well, we were selling a house, and so I was ordering cabinet fronts to replace some old cabinets. So the guy comes over to take some measurements, and he said, your email signature, that's Young Ameritown, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, I went through Young Ameritown and I just started this business. And that really got me going. And cool. It's exactly right. You're like, I am making a difference.
That's
to
cool.
Have
that's
some guy that I just dialed out of the phone book, and he went through Young Ameritown, and it's changed his life as a business owner.
That's pretty special. Pretty special. Yep. Rich, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your story and being on the Riderflex podcast. The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.